All right, well, hello, OLLI. Welcome into our penultimate OLLI class of this season. We will be back next fall. Are we in fall? We'll be back in the spring with a community development land use class. But for today, we are going to dive into public works, which is a very general name for a department of ours that covers a lot of the infrastructure that you use every single day. My favorite piece of infrastructure, which is a flushing toilet, which you all will get a tour of our wastewater treatment plant next week. So Scott, I'm going to pass the mic over to you, and then I will go dark, but I will be listening.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm Scott Fleury. As Jordan said, I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Ashland. I've been with the city about 19 years now. So if you count that in dog years, it's quite a long time. And I'm going to provide kind of a high-level overview of all of the public works operations and functions that we do for the city. We'll talk about the divisions, talk about capital planning and maintenance, the water treatment plant, the wastewater plant, street operations, and everything that kind of falls under the public works umbrella here for the city, which is quite a few functions overall. And I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully I can dig it up. And there we go. And so hopefully everybody can see that.
Yes.
And then we'll have, hopefully we'll have enough time because at the end for questions, because I know people generally after getting a presentation like this have a lot of thoughts and questions that will pop up. So in general, Public Works, like I said, it's the largest department in the city, and it's a catch-all for a lot of different things. We have the engineering support and project management division, which I'm primarily in or have been in my whole career here in the city of Ashland. And I'll kind of provide an overview of what that is and what we do as far as engineering and project management and planning. I'll cover just in brief some of our miscellaneous divisions. You know, we have 3 cemeteries. We do the fleet maintenance and management. We maintain all of the city's operational facilities, and we also own and maintain a general aviation airport. We'll talk about the street division and everything that happens within the right of way for street maintenance and pavement preservation. We'll talk about our water divisions, conservation, distribution, supply, and treatment, and what's involved in those decisions and how those things are operated. And then lastly, we'll finish up with the wastewater division for collections and treatment. And again, how those things are regulated and managed on a daily basis. So the first thing is engineering and support, capital planning. One of the things I like to talk about is, you know, why do we do the things we do and how do we get here as part of, you know, maintenance projects or capital infrastructure projects. And the primary thing that we do for all of our systems is develop a master plan. So we have master plans for facilities. We have master plans for the airport, for the water system, for the wastewater system, for the storm drain system, for the transportation system. And those plans are developed over as long as a 24-month period, depending on how complex they are. Generally, when we start the process of developing an enterprise system master plan, the council will appoint some level of citizen committee to chaperone that process and be involved as community members to learn and understand and make recommendations. And during that master plan development process, you know, there are certain critical milestones that we hold some level of public meeting, public survey, open house, things of that nature, to get feedback from the community on this master plan development. And so an example of this is previous water master plan. We have what's called the Ashland Water Advisory Committee. And this is a committee of citizen appointed representatives that chaperoned that plan for about 2 years and made their recommendations in a continuous feedback loop with city staff and the consultant firm that was charged with doing that. So once we get to kind of near the end of the plan development and everyone's comfortable, and I'll say it's about 90% done, we go and engage the council on it and give a presentation to the city council in a public meeting and take feedback from the city council on the plan itself. And if they have any sort of things that they would like addressed or resolved that they found in the plan, then we go back and address those comments that we received from the city council or even public members at that time, providing feedback in a public meeting. We resolve those, and then we go back and we ask the city council to essentially adopt that master plan as our guiding document. And a lot of these master plans, they develop the financial forecast. They develop what capital infrastructure needs that you should employ over a 20-year period. They develop what level of service you should provide for that enterprise. So say for wastewater, how often should we camera our sewer system? How often should we replace things? How often should we do certain improvements or maintenance activities? So that's all involved in the development of the master plan, and that's why we use those as the kind of the guiding document. So from that, we develop a capital improvement plan. The capital improvement takes all of the major infrastructure needs and aligns them with a 2-year budget cycle and then a 6-year outlook in time. And the 2-year is really that focus period of things we really expect to do within a budget biennium. And once we have that developed, we take that to the council and have the council adopt that as our capital improvement plan for essentially the 2-year period, because every 2-year budget biennium, we end up adjusting it. Once we get that capital plan approved, then we go through the budget process where we request appropriations for the capital infrastructure needs, but also the people, materials, and services within each division so that they can do their daily jobs out there on the streets or in the water system or at the wastewater plant or at the water treatment plant. And we go through the budget committee process, and then finally council approves and adopts the formal 2-year budget. Once we have the budget in place, then we can go in and start initiating some of these major maintenance or capital projects. And when we start that generally through a solicitation process where we know we're going to need some level of engineering support specifically to design a water lift station or a water pump station or a water transmission main. And we do that through what's called a qualifications-based selection. So we release this document out to the public and consultants respond to it and tell us how they are the most qualified to do the work. And then a scoring team grades them, and then the highest ranked consultant team is selected, and then we negotiate a fee and a scope for that project. And once we get that in place, then we begin that preliminary engineering or alternatives phase where they start to do some of that preliminary legwork on the design. And usually we go to about 30 to 60% of the total design in that preliminary and alternatives phase. Once we get comfortable with that, then we go into the final engineering phase of the project where we actually have the consultants develop the final engineering construction plans and specifications that we can go out to bid a project for the construction phase. Then we go into that construction phase where we bid the project out, we get a contractor on board, and then they go out and actually construct the physical improvement out there in the world. And we also have some level of construction administration oversight. So we have people that are on site watching the contractor, ensuring that he's doing what he's supposed to do based on the specifications for the project and the actual construction documents, the physical drawings of what he's supposed to build. So we're always ensuring that there's a certain level of quality control and assurance to make sure that we get what we're paying for out there when a contractor constructs something. So that's kind of the basic functions of engineering support. We also do just general over-the-counter right-of-way permits. So if your sewer line fails and you have to have it replaced, we do right-of-way permits. If your sidewalk fails and that needs to be replaced, we have miscellaneous concrete and customer service front end about public works questions, right-of-way questions that can be answered here. In our office, where that customer service portion is located, is right across from Lithia Park in the Community Development Building. So we have administrative staff that can talk to you via phone or at the front counter there during business hours and during the week itself. So our miscellaneous operations include the 3 historic cemeteries, Mountain View, Ashland, and Hargadine. And those are managed by a cemetery sexton and a utility worker. And the state of Oregon has specific rules and regulations about how you manage certain cemeteries. The Hargadine is a historic pioneer cemetery. So basically it's meant to be natural and live in the environment. So it's not very curated. It's left in that natural environment. You know, Mountain View and Ashland are more curated and taken care of. The mausoleum is at the location on Ashland Street, and that's where operationally they're housed. So they do everything from start to finish with organizing the burial and the service for the community and taking care of all that stuff. The other thing that Public Works manages is the fleet. And the fleet is all of our rolling stock, our vehicles and things of that nature, and then all of our equipment. And equipment can be anything from a chainsaw to a 500 kilowatt backup generator at the wastewater treatment plant. So they manage all of that. And we have quite a large stock of rolling stock, you know, heavy equipment that we use day to day. Fire department vehicles, police vehicles are also included in that. Golf carts for the golf carts are included in that kind of maintenance for vehicles. And then all of the city's facilities are maintained by our facilities division. We have a couple of utility workers and a supervisor and 3 custodians. So they take care of all the day-to-day facility needs. So a broken refrigerator, a broken water line in your building, torn up carpet, office remodeling needs, all of that falls under the facilities umbrella. And we have quite a few facilities throughout the city. And when you consider, you know, the fire departments, the police department, the Grove, 90 North Mountain, City Hall, our building, community development, Briscoe School is part of the city facilities umbrella. So there's a lot of day-to-day things that need to be addressed by facilities. And we also have essentially a facility master plan as well that tells us how we should look to organize and evolve our facilities to become a more efficient operation. And then lastly is the airport. The city is essentially owned and operated an airport since the 40s, and it's out there by Emigrant Lake off of Dead Indian Memorial Road. It's what we call a general aviation airport. So it's not controlled by a tower. It's what they call visual flight rules. So, and it's made for a certain size of aircraft and down. And the airport, you know, is a self-sufficient operation. It runs off leases and rentals out there at the airport, and then is significantly supported by the Federal Aviation Administration through their grant process. So between the state of Oregon, who also provides grants for airport improvements and maintenance, the FAA does too, and the FAA provides about a 90% grant for major projects, and the state, through their process, provides generally about a 7 to 8% match grant. So a lot of the times, the airport itself is only on the hook for about 2 to 3% of a construction cost, which is all maintained within that airport fund itself. So now we'll get into the nuts and bolts of kind of the big 3 of public works operations, the street division. And so this is some drone footage of Ashland Street. And I kind of like this footage because it shows really everything that the street department has to take care of on a daily and annual basis. So everything from the curb line on one side of the street to the curb line on the other side of the street falls to the street division and responsibilities. So that's the signals, the striping, the markings, the signage, the road itself, curb and gutter lines, all of that kind of falls to the street division itself. And we have over a couple hundred lane miles in total of roadway within the city. There's thousands of feet of striping that has to be managed, and crosswalks, and thousands of signs that have to be managed. And those signs actually have a regulatory requirement to have a certain level of reflectivity to them. And so every so often, a majority of the signs that you see out there in the system have to be replaced to ensure that they have and meet that reflectivity requirement. One of their primary functions is pavement preservation, and they do that through a few different means and mechanisms. Annually, our street department supervisor or some of his senior staff go out and they do a visual inspection of portions of the roadways throughout the city, and they rate it with a pavement condition index. And so that pavement condition index gives us an idea of relative maintenance needs for the street system. And it's a 0 to 100 ranking, where 100 is a brand new street and a 0 is basically a dirt road at that point. And so the goal of the city is to at least maintain all of our pavement structures to about a 70 pavement condition index, which is generally in pretty good repair. So once they kind of identify the pavement condition and update those numbers, they start and they attack from the maintenance side of things. And primarily what they do is they do some crack sealing to seal up cracks in the road so you don't have water infiltration that gets under the roadway bed and then freezes and creates issues. Then they go out and they do overlays. And this is a couple pictures of them overlaying short sections of roadway here in the city. The city does own a paver, so they're able internally from our street crew guys to go out and do some of these small overlay projects. I believe they just did Park Street, they just did Church Street, resurfaced those completely recently. And then they'll do small pavement patching jobs where a short section of roadway on one section is bad or has failed. They'll go out and patch that and replace it. They'll also do some of that work for our other utility divisions. So if the water department or wastewater department cuts up the roadway, oftentimes our street crew will go back and replace that pavement as part of their operation. Then you get into just the general day-to-day catch-all for the street department. So they also do vegetation management as part of their overall program, and this includes vision clearance issues. So if you get to an intersection where a stop sign is somewhat guarded by, say, an overgrown bush or a tree, you can let us know, and the street department will go out and make sure that it is covering and notify the property owner that has the vision blockage bush or tree that they need to cut it back and how far they need to cut it back to make sure that you can see that stop sign or that street sign. The street department also does some of the storm drain improvement and management of the storm drain system, and they share that responsibility with our wastewater collection. So it's divided by two divisions. They go out and they fix potholes. They do all of the traffic control for special events, the parades and things of that nature, and they coordinate with police on that as part of that process. As I said, they do all of the signage, marking, striping for the whole city. They manage that and take care of that. They do all the snow plowing on the local roadways in winter when we have a storm, and we have 4 plows with cinder boxes in the back that can go around town. And they try to, during a storm event, manage kind of the higher volume arterial and collector streets first, and then they move out to the lower order residential streets. They run the street sweeper. So Right now, because of the leaves are falling off the tree at record pace, 2 street sweepers are running essentially full-time right now to pick up all that debris. The rest of the year, we generally have 1 street sweeper working every day, and there's a general sweeping schedule and a map that we house on the city's website. They also go out and do grading of dirt streets within the city itself. So we still have a few dirt roadways in the city, and they go out there and grade and repair those as needed. They've also been involved in numerous public art installations over the years. They go out and remove debris that people deposit on the street. So someone throws a couch in the street, they end up having to pick that up. Or if a tree falls in a storm within the roadway, which we had last night from this wind, they will go out and cut that tree up and remove it. The street department is also involved in emergency response, traffic control for any sort of emergency response or evacuation needs. So they were heavily involved in the recent evacuation test that our emergency manager put on as part of that process. So next I'll cover, oops, see if we can get this going. Didn't want to play. There we go. The water divisions. So this is Reeder Reservoir and some drone footage of Reeder Reservoir. And we're flying from the south to the north right now. And what you see to the far top of the screen is Hostler Dam, which impounds our reservoir. Hostler Dam was constructed in 1928 and into 1929 and filled in 1929, and it's been operational ever since. And not a lot of people actually get to see the reservoir or the dam because it is protected from public access. A little vertigo here as we switch the view. So that's the front face of the dam, and then the reservoir itself. The reservoir is, in reservoir terms, basically a puddle to other reservoirs that you see. It's about 800 acre feet, which is about 260 million gallons of storage. And to put that in perspective, Lost Creek Lake up in Prospect area is 465,000 acre feet relative to 800 acre feet. So it's a pretty small reservoir, but it does generally take care of the city's water needs from a potable water need annually. So there's 4 divisions within the water side of things. The first division is the supply side. And so, like I said, that's the Reeder Reservoir and Hostler Dam. The city also has water rights to the Talent Irrigation District system, which we use both for community irrigation. So there are some community members who have access to the TID system to use non-potable water during the irrigation season. We also have the ability to pump that water from the TID ditch up to the water treatment plant and treat that water. So if we have a low water year, a low snowpack year on Mount Ashland, and we're concerned about potential water supply in September and October timeframe, which is generally where we would get concerned, we have the ability to augment with that water from TID and treat that. In 2014, the city finally connected into the Talent Ashland Phoenix or TAP intertie. And so that gives the city ability to take water from the Medford Water Commission and the Duff Treatment Plant as an additional resilient supply source. So that's essentially what we call an on-demand emergency source that we can add to the system anytime we think we need to from an emergency or water supply standpoint. And that's pumped into, that's sent all the way from Medford and the Duff plant on the Rogue River through Medford's system, through Phoenix's system, through Talent's water system, and into Ashland. We have a booster pump station right there at TC Chevy at the bottom of the hill right before you turn onto Valley View that boosts the water into Ashland system. And we can take about 2 to 3 million gallons a day of water from that system. On top of the dam itself, the operators, they manage the dam and the intake tower. So the intake tower is where we draw raw water and transfer it down our transmission penstock to the treatment plant for treating. And so they manage how that's operated. And then the dam itself has 6 centerway spillway gates. So during the winter season, those spillway gates are removed and we manage the reservoir at a certain level. And when we get ready to fill the reservoir for our summer season to manage the supply that way, those spillway gates are put into place, and that raises the reservoir pool by about 3 feet, giving us a little bit extra water for summer. Now, a mile downstream of the plant itself, or the dam, is the water treatment plant. And the water treatment plant and operation is managed by the Oregon Health Authority, and we're required to meet all of the Oregon Health Authority requirements for treated water. So there's what we call a top 35 chemical constituent list of organics and non-organics that you have to make sure that your treated water falls under the sampling requirements for each one of those constituents. And they also maintain the infrastructure at the treatment plant. So that's all the chemical buildings, the pipelines, the pumps, all of the infrastructure at the plant itself. They also coordinate with the electric department. We have a 699 kilowatt turbine generator that generates hydroelectricity at the water treatment plant location. And so we try to maximize that hydroelectric generation when we have excess water, which is basically during the winter time itself. And our treatment plant operators coordinate with our electric department, who manages the actual hydroelectric plant, to make sure that we are trying to maximize that electric generation. And in the peak, it's about a couple thousand homes of power daily that's generated. During the summer, that drops off quite a bit because we do not have or run as much water as we do in winter through the generator system itself. And the picture below is probably one of my favorite pictures that I found since I've been here with the city of Ashland. That is the 1974 flood, and that is one of the water treatment plant operators at that point on the roof of an outbuilding that was pushed off its foundation in the flood. And it's sitting against the wall of a canyon right there. And he's just waiting his time to be able to get out of that situation. And this is one of the reasons of many that the city is building a new water treatment plant about a mile downstream of this existing location to get it out of the flood zone, the landslide zone, and it's directly in the tight canyon that's heavily forest. So there's serious fire concern in that location. And so we'll be constructing a new water treatment plant, hopefully in 26, 27, and 28, in a location that's out of the fire zone, out of the landslide zone, and out of the flooding zone, up on Upper Granite. So then we have the water distribution system. So once it leaves the water treatment plant, it's got to make it to your tap. And water distribution system, they take care of all the pump stations, and we have 5 pump stations in the city, 4 now. They repair all the leaks. We just had a massive leak, a 6-inch ductile iron pipe cracked about 8 feet long on B Street at the intersection of 5th. And they spent the day out there repairing that. So that's one of their primary tasks. They manage the reservoirs, all of our potable water storage tanks. They get them cleaned and inspected. They manage all the pressure reducing valves. So there's a pretty significant gradient from the water treatment plant down to the bottom of the city, which generates a significant amount of pressure in the water system. And so we have reducing valves to lower that pressure to make sure that, you know, we don't have additional leak issues out there in the system. They maintain and replace all the fire hydrants. They do flushing of the system through hydrants, all of the meter readings. So about 9,000 meters are read monthly by a meter reader. And then they also coordinate with the fire department to do fire flow testing at hydrants as part of a building and development process. And then lastly, we have a water conservation program. And basically, they do indoor and outdoor audits. There's specific rebate programs that the city has in place for water conservation improvements. So, toilet replacement for lower flow toilets, lawn replacement, smart meter irrigation controller, things of that nature. And we're testing out an additional product right now that might come in the future as an additional rebate program. They also do kind of education and outreach. They've done gray water trainings for people interested in what we call laundry to landscape, where you use your washing machine water to irrigate a small area of your landscape. And then we have small giveaways like moisture meters and faucet aerators and shower heads that you can pick up at our office here as part of that water conservation program that we run. Now let's see if it does it. So here's a short video of what it looks like to be in the trenches to repair a water line leak. So this is late at night, early in the morning, 39 degrees out, and he's down in the ditch getting blasted with water and putting a metal strap band over the leak itself and tightening that down to repair that leak. And we joke that there's not very many leaks that happen like on B Street during the day. Most of them happen at the middle of the night and inopportune times. We had one about 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. It was on Christmas Eve. And so a majority of the water crew guys were in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve repairing a water line leak. So lastly, once you use the water, it's got to go somewhere. And that's enters our wastewater collection system. And so we have a wastewater collections crew. So they repair the sewer main lines. They replace sewer main lines. They upsize them if needed for capacity related issues. We have a camera inspection system where they go out and they camera the sewer main lines, about a quarter of the system annually. They'll go out and camera and they'll find cracks or issues. And then they'll make a plan to repair those cracks or replace sections of the main line itself. They go out and do flow monitoring and smoke testing to see if we have any sort of cross connections. We have what's called a municipally separated storm sewer, which means our storm drain system is completely separate from our wastewater system. And we want to make sure that we reduce those connections between stormwater and the wastewater system if they're out there. Like some people have their roof downspouts attached to their sewer drain. And what that does is just increase the treatment needs to treat basically rainwater that should be running off into the curb and into the storm drain system. So they do smoke tests to identify some of those cross connections. They manage all of the manholes, repair and replace. We have 4 sewage lift stations where we don't have the ability to flow sewage via gravity, so it's got to lift it up and pump it to a point where we have gravity flow. And so they manage that. And again, they're part of the storm drain system too with the street department. So they do the repair and maintenance of the storm drain system. And probably some of you have seen this monster of a truck out there. This is our jet rodder. And what this does is clean out the sewer main lines. And so they'll be all over town and you'll see this. And basically it's a heavy duty pressure washer that will flush out the lines. And then here's some camera footage of them, inspecting a transmission main line to find any, like I said, cracks or infiltration leaks that they could go in and repair. And then lastly, after it travels, it hits the wastewater treatment plant system. And wastewater treatment plant is regulated by the Department of Environmental Quality. and we have a pollution discharge permit. And that permit has water quality requirements that the city must meet in treating wastewater before it can release that water into Bear Creek. And so we have 5 staff members and a supervisor down there, and they maintain the treatment system and all the infrastructure on the site. And we have what's called a tertiary treatment system, meaning there's 3 steps that occur before that water is fully treated and released into Bear Creek. The first step is the oxidation ditch, where essentially you can think of it as bugs in that brown water eat the bad stuff. And then it's sent to a clarifier where any sort of solids left settle out, and then it's pumped through a membrane filtration system that picks up any sort of additional phosphorus or chemicals in the water. And then it goes through a UV light disinfection system, and then it's piped and sent an outfall into Bear Creek. And so they have daily reporting and testing that they have to do to ensure that that wastewater that hits Bear Creek meets the requirements established in our permit. And that permit gets reviewed and updated every 5 years. And generally, the requirements do not get less restrictive, they get more restrictive. And so there's been quite a few projects over the last 20 years to enhance the wastewater treatment plant to ensure we meet compliance with our permit requirements. And we have a little bit of drone footage of the site there. And this is what you'll get to walk around next week. Ben, our treatment plant supervisor, will give you the full overview of how it all works and comes together as part of that. And if you've never been down there, don't worry, it doesn't smell as bad as you think. It smells a bit musty, but definitely not as bad as you would originally think. And really, that is kind of the nuts and bolts of everything. And just have some Q&A.
So this is Kim Rossmeyer. I have a question about the tertiary treated water.
Yep.
Is that ever used other than just going to Bear Creek? Is that ever used like for putting into a water truck when they clean streets or something like that?
So they've tried it before. What the issue is some of the pumping and mechanical apparatus on our service vehicles like that can't handle kind of some of the sediment that's in that water. But we have talked about it before. What a lot of communities do or are transitioning to do is what they call a purple pipe system, where they use that water to irrigate areas. The problem with the city has is the treatment plant is at the bottom of the city. And to get to kind of a close parcel or something that you could use that water on, I would say that would be the North Mountain Park area. And so the infrastructure to pump and get it there to irrigate that area, pretty expensive right now from a cost basis. So that's why we continue to release into Bear Creek. But I think at some point, there'll be more of an emphasis on trying to figure out better ways to reuse that water, because we do treat it to such a high standard that you can apply it to, your lawns and your trees and vegetation.
So following up on that, being used in the vegetated medians, is there any? I mean, seems to me it would be a fairly simple thing to do just by loading up a truck and having the truck do there. But is that the same problem with the sediment in the water?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have tried to use that for other means, but the equipment that we have currently, it gums up the pumping system.
Okay, thanks.
Are you going to narrate, or are you going to call questions, or Jordan, how do you want to do this?
I got distracted by an email. Scott, you go ahead. If
Well,
You
let's
need help
start
up
with
here.
Phil. He's up at the top left right
Okay.
now.
I got a couple of questions. One is, under whose jurisdiction are the public school buildings?
Ashland School District manages and maintains all the public school buildings. The school district sold Briscoe Elementary to the city of Ashland 2017, and that's why we have that building and we're the owners and maintainers of that. Oregon Childhood Coalition Development is in there and they lease that facility for their program. They lease the building from the city for their program.
Okay, my other question is, how do you determine when a road should be resurfaced?
So that's our kind of pavement condition index factor. And so our street department supervisor, uses that condition index and some other factors about when he attacks those roadways. And so that's kind of our maintenance operation. So when they start to get down to, I will say 30 on that PCI, that's really in a bad spot. And so that's when they really look to do those grind, removal, and overlays. For our arterial and collectors, we have a systematic approach to those. Those have all had deflection testing and coring sampling done, a higher level of analysis. So Ashland Street, Siskiyou Boulevard, Hersey Street, North Mountain have all been looked at a higher level. And so that's how we've come up with our systematic approach to redo those sections of roadway. We did Hersey Street a few years ago. We did Ashland Street last year. We're doing a huge portion of North Mountain this coming year. And then we will be doing Oak Street after that, 27, 28, and then Siskiyou Boulevard, 28, 29, is how we have it planned right now. But those bigger order streets are looked at a little bit differently. They actually have physical testing done to them, not just a visual analysis.
Thanks. I also had a comment to make about your sewer line cleanouts with the, what did you call it? The jet
Rotter?
rotor. Yeah, I had a chance in a different neighborhood that I lived in once to talk to the guys who did this. And one of them said that I think after they've run the jet thing through there, somebody actually climbs down in with a shovel to sort of sweep up things that have collected. And he said they find amazing things, including once a diamond ring.
Oh.
Yeah, there's, we have lots of general issues. We hate rags and Swiffers, especially in a location where we have a lift station, because those rags and Swiffers, people often flush down the drain and they will hit that dirty water pump and clog it up and stop the system. Because it just builds up and they're not able to, grind that heavy wet material. And so, we do campaigns occasionally of really don't flush anything down the toilet that should not be flushed down the toilet, because it can create a maintenance issue and it can create a blockage, which then, could potentially lead to a sewer overflow into the street or into a primary residence. Which we have occasionally, from bad things in the sewer itself, creating those blockages.
Well, thanks.
I think we have Elaine.
Yeah, hi, Scott. Thank you for being here and your excellent presentation. I hope I didn't miss this, but did you talk at all about who's responsible for fixing sidewalks that, have been impacted by tree roots or something like that?
So Ashland Municipal Code requires the adjacent property owner to repair and maintain the sidewalk. So there's two sections of the code that create that obligation. One is in the nuisance ordinance, section 9, which you're obligated to keep the sidewalk free and clear of debris and snow and things of that nature. And then if the sidewalk is in disrepair, I think it's section 13, and the city notices you of this, you're obligated to create a plan and schedule to repair that section of sidewalk yourself.
So if
And
we see,
oftentimes it's a complaint-driven process.
Okay.
So that's how, if we're notified, then we notify the adjacent residents. We don't go out there and sweep around looking. We just don't have the staff resources to do that. So it's a complaint-driven process.
okay, so we can report it through the city's report system.
Yes.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
Thank
Peter?
Hi, Scott. A couple questions. Maybe I should have asked this last week of Rocky, but what's going on with Windborne?
So I'll tell you what I know, which is a little. The Parks Department and Parks Commission are talking about safety improvements of a portion of Windburn Way. And that portion of Windburn Way is essentially from the band shell to its connection on Granite Street. And there's two components to what they're looking at for safety improvements. One is to make it safer for bike and pedestrians along that corridor, to potentially slow or remove vehicles from that corridor, and to eliminate the two connection points to Granite Street at that upper section. So if you know that upper section, there's one that kind of goes straight onto Granite, and that there's one that's 90 degrees to turn left to right onto Granite. What they would like to do, and I would like to do this, is eliminate that one that goes straight, because you can't turn your neck far enough to see people coming up the hill. But if you come to that intersection at that 90 degree, you can look in both directions and see. So I'm recommending that. I'm less concerned about the other safety improvements along that corridor, but that's not my decision. That is actually part of Lithia Park, that roadway. It's not what I would call a right-of-way that's jurisdictional to the city of Ashland and would fall within my realm of responsibility. And so the Parks Commission will be talking about those options, and I'm not quite sure when they have that scheduled. I don't know if you remember, Jordan. Yeah. But they have a couple options to do some striping changes or to essentially eliminate vehicular traffic in total through that stretch.
Okay. And Scott, are you, down by the wastewater treatment plant on the other side of the Greenway, there is a very large collection of things that seem like they might be your things, vehicles that
Yeah.
probably don't run, blue plastic barrels, little bits of pipe and odds and ends. Is that your junk?
I will accept responsibility for that. Yeah, so that's what we call the Hardesty property. We purchased that property 5-7 years ago with the intent to demolish some of those exterior structures to the west and build a metal building that would house some of our service equipment that can't be out in winter. And can't be impacted by any sort of freeze-thaw cycle. And what that was meant to do is, if you know where our incorporation yard is at 90 North Mountain, across the street we have a smaller yard, which we call the B Street yard. The intent was to relocate all of that from B Street down to the Hardesty property, and then open up that B Street parcel for development, redevelopment, or a higher and better use other than us storing equipment and cones and paint and things of that nature. And then also moving the street department from 90 North Mountain down there as well, so we can free up some much needed capacity at 90 North Mountain because of all the vehicles and all the equipment and all the people that are down there. We're really running out of space from a facility standpoint. So we're looking at developing down there to store some people and equipment down at the Hardesty property. And that's kind of in our capital plan over the next kind of 2 to 4 year window, is to improve that site itself. And then visually improve it so you don't see the hodgepodge ragtag structure that's down there right now.
You do have quite a collection.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple Connex boxes and things like that. And yeah.
And Scott, before we get to Elaine and Sue, there's a couple questions that have been sitting in chat. Then I'll read a couple. We'll go back to the audience and I'll read the last few. Approximately how much water do Ashland residents use each day?
So what I will say is the average daily demand, if you look at 365 days a year, is just under 3 million gallons a day. In the wintertime, the demand ebbs and flows from about 1.7 million to 2 million gallons during the winter season. And during the summer season, peak summer, we're about 5 to 5.85 million gallons a day of production. The water treatment plant, as it currently sits, is rated to do 7.5 million gallons a day of production. The highest that we've ever been since I've been here is about 6.8, 6.9 million gallons a day. Our new treatment plant, based on all of the analysis that we've done and future projections, will be built at 7 million gallons a day and expandable to 9 million gallons a day in the future. And those future projections include climate change impacts and also firefighting impacts as well. So there's been a lot of work and looking at what the future projections would be. We also take into account the use of TAP as an additional supply source, up to that 3 million gallons a day availability as well.
And then, Scott, what is the potable water PSI to residents?
So the minimum required by the state for us to deliver to your meter is 20 PSI. Our system ranges from 20 PSI to close to 200 PSI. And once you get, I believe the building code requirement is if the pressure at your meter is above 80 PSI, you need to have a pressure regulator on your water side to make sure that it doesn't go above that 80 PSI, because in extended periods, you could potentially pop your water heater. And so the water department or our staff can kind of give you an idea because we do have pressure analysis on our utility information, but that's not exact because that changes seasonally as well. So you could potentially, based on how we have our reservoirs managed, you could be 40 PSI in winter and 95 PSI in summer based on reservoir levels. So it's best to have, if you're concerned about it, a plumber, test your pressure and give you a recommendation.
Thanks, Scott. I'm gonna go, oh, go ahead.
Can I ask one more question to follow up on that PSI?
Yep.
I teach the home repair and maintenance class at OLLI, and the question comes up often about wastewater lines up on the watershed, the homes, the earlier homes in the city. If any of those are clay, what kind of repair are they in? Do they have concerns and worries about those pipes? And if so, is there anything that can be done?
So older homes are definitely going to have, unless the sewer main or the sewer lateral has been replaced, will generally have a clay pipe or what we call Orangeburg tar paper pipe. And Orangeburg will be very good for a long time, or it will be very bad and really should be replaced if you have that tar paper Orangeburg pipe. Clay will last a long time and cement will last a long time. What happens on those sewer laterals is that you have root intrusion in the joints, and then they start to crack and pull apart that pipe itself. So and I do this because I have an older home in Medford, is every other year, basically, we have a plumber come out and have them snake that drain and cut any root and root intrusion out and run a camera on it to make sure that you don't have any major issues. And so potentially you can repair, replace small sections, or you would end up looking at replacing the whole thing from your connection all the way to the street transmission main. And, so it could be a cheap resolution or a very expensive resolution for those sewer laterals. And what I do say is that people can check with their home insurance provider, and you can actually have that as an underwriting item on your home insurance policy to get replaced as part of that. You just have to pay kind of that insurance premium differential, but they will insure it. Most often, it is not directly covered under your homeowner's insurance. So that would be something to check with your insurance provider.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Elaine, let's go for you and then Sue.
Hi, thank you. This has been really helpful and interesting. First, with the streets, how do you coordinate with the state? Because we have, a state highway and a federal highway going through. Do they pay for or do any of the repairs and maintenance and paving?
So, Oregon Department of Transportation, they do. And so we have a hodgepodge of who owns what in the city. So North Main, basically from the library out of town towards the railroad trestle and towards Medford is Oregon Department of Transportation. So they do any sort of pavement maintenance or striping along that corridor. They also do it on Siskiyou Boulevard, basically from Walker Avenue all the way out of town is also their responsibility. And then Ashland Street from Clay Street, Faith, over the overpass towards Shopping Cart, Bimart is the state's system as well. And so they do that maintenance and take care of those roadways. There's a program that the state has been pushing for years for jurisdictional transfer, where they want to give some of those low volume state highways to the local municipalities to maintain and manage. We've been reticent about that because then you take over a big section of roadway at a big cost. But as part of our transportation system plan update that we'll be working on over the next 2 years, those conversations will come back up. There is some monetary benefit for both agencies. You just have to make sure that you do the right thing and account for things correctly if you were to ever accept those roadways.
Right. Yeah, and I've noticed that you've been doing some repairs, like at the top of Van Ness going into Main Street, which really needed it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that. But when the sidewalks are originally put in, is that the responsibility of the homeowner? I mean, we have old sidewalks, and also like the sidewalk in front of Briscoe is not in great shape either.
Yeah.
Just letting you know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple sections on North Main where you have weird curb separations and elevation issues. So it's been a hodgepodge of development for sidewalk. The city itself has installed some sidewalk sections over the years. Property owners, through a development process or subdivision development process, are often obligated to install sidewalk if it doesn't exist, as part of that. And then, and for our roadway projects that we do, like Ashland Street, North Mountain, Oak Street, if there is a section of sidewalk that needs to be replaced or doesn't exist, we add that into that project. And so we also upgrade all of the ADA ramps when we do that, because you need to meet the current standards. So all of the ADA ramps on North Mountain, when we get to that, will be replaced to meet the current standard. And then there will be continuous sidewalk along North Mountain. There's a couple gap sections, and we will make that continuous as part of our rehabilitation project. But oftentimes, the property owner is obligated to add, but generally that's through a development process where you're adding, a unit where there's a nexus to say, yeah, you need to install that sidewalk.
And my last question is about the PSI. Are there certain areas of town where it's going to be higher than other areas, or does it just vary everywhere?
So higher up on the hill, it's going to be lower. So above the boulevard, above Ashland Street, you're generally going to be a bit lower. As you start to get lower towards the boulevard and across town towards the airport, it starts to get higher because there is such an elevation differential between the closest potable water tank and where that water meter sits.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yep.
And I just want to check in, y'all. We are at 2:02. Scott and I will hang out here for another 15 minutes, but just wanted to let you all know for those that have a hard time crunch. Sue, we had a hand raised from you, and then I'll go to the chat again.
Well, the question I really had goes to the sidewalks again, because what I'm seeing people do, if they've got sidewalk disruption, that they'll spray paint it, So is that a solution, acceptable solution? I get it. It's an expensive, cement is a hugely expensive repair.
Yeah, it's worse. It's worse now. Yeah. That is not an acceptable solution. So what we define a trip hazard as is where we would require you to do something is if there's a 1/4 inch differential between the two panels creates a trip hazard. So it's not a bunch, but that is what the ADA defines as a trip hazard. So if you have a small separation like that between the two panels, painting it pink doesn't solve that issue. What we do allow people to do as a kind of a temporary stopgap until it potentially gets work is you can come in and grind that concrete down and smooth it over so you don't have that trip catch portion. And that lasts for a little bit of time, but Mother Nature and trees and roots eventually win out, and then it gets time to have to replace those concrete panels. And circumstances where we know you're going to have tree root issues again, what they end up doing is they end up, or we recommend this, is rebarring the panels together and connecting them. So if the tree roots push them, they go up together and create a rolling effect instead of just a separation like this.
And Scott, this question's from the chat, but it ties right into what Sue was asking. Who is responsible for curbs?
If the curb is adjacent and tied into the sidewalk, depending on what the issue is, generally we have the property owner address that as part of a sidewalk issue. If the curb is adjacent to a park row and not touching the sidewalk, generally the city will take care of that issue as part of a safety improvement or issue. So we wouldn't rank it high on a priority list unless it was damaging a storm drain system or water wasn't flowing correctly and creating a flooding issue. We would rank repairing curbs down relative to some of the other maintenance projects we have, but we will attack it at some point generally.
And then Scott, a question for sidewalks that pass over the railroad tracks. Who's responsible for those sidewalks?
Generally the railroad, Central Oregon Pacific Railroad should be responsible for that section of sidewalk unless we have a maintenance agreement with them. So where we've done, the city has done railroad crossing improvements. So Hersey Street, Oak Street, The city has actually done that improvement. The city would be responsible for that section of sidewalk.
And so does that mean that we're also responsible for snow removal in the winter?
Yeah, we would essentially be responsible for that.
So that was my question. And I walked over the railroad tracks on Ashland Street last winter after that big snowstorm, and those sidewalks were absolutely treacherous. So who's responsible for clearing them when there's snow on those particular sidewalks over the railroad tracks?
Yeah, that would be our street department would be, kind of, or our facilities department, depending on our staffing level, to get out there and clean that, is part of that. And, initially they're primarily focused on cleaning the roadways, itself and, creating access back to, the hospital and on our arterials and collectors. And then, you fall back to those other small things like the multi-use path on Siskiyou Boulevard, that runs from Walker all the way out to basically Tolman Bellevue. That's another path that the city owns and maintains and has to clear. Right now, leaves are an issue because they make that surface slick. And then it also, the same thing, snow will get on that surface. So the city eventually operationally gets and clears those things.
Yeah, and I think this is a comment we received a lot, Elaine, during that snowstorm. The city has limited resources for response, and we have priority rankings of what we do first. And so unfortunately, sidewalks and parking, because the big one I heard was, the downtown parking, those are our lowest on the list. But hopefully we don't have that large of a snowstorm next year so that we can have better response across all of our priorities.
Just at 7,000 feet. That's
Yeah, keep our mountain well populated.
Yeah.
Bill, before we go with you, we have 2 questions in chat. I'm gonna do Mitch's first because it's a really fun question. But Scott, I'm gonna make you read it because I don't want to mislead you on the proper pronunciation of a street in town.
So it's Whiteman.
White.
That's what I've always been told. It's Whiteman, not Whitman. It's Whiteman. Yeah.
And Scott, can you give us more detail on the North Mountain update plan?
So the city council, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, they awarded the construction contract for the rehabilitation of North Mountain to Carter and Company. And the contracts are in place. And essentially, we don't have a schedule yet, but we know the end date. Under the contract, they are supposed to be done with all improvements by May 30th of 2026. And this is the section of North Mountain from Hersey Street to the interstate. So adjacent to the Nature Center, all the way up to Mount Meadows Skylark. That whole roadway will be repaved, sidewalk will be added, new ADA ramps will be installed, new bike markings, signage, all of that will be installed. And then there will be a rectangular rapid flashing beacon pedestrian crossing installed from east to west at the Nature Center as part of that. So those flashing rapid beacons that you see on Siskiyou Boulevard, one will be installed for crossing from one side to the other at the Nature Center location.
Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Phil, I'm gonna take Phil's our last question, and I'm gonna steal the last 2 minutes just to talk about next week.
Quick one, how many personnel are in your department?
Total allocated FTE, we have 72 people. And that includes all of the operational staff. That includes mechanics, custodians, cemetery, water treatment, wastewater treatment, street department, wastewater, myself, all of our engineering, project management, administration staff is 72 people.
Absolutely. All right, guys, I'm gonna jump in. First off, who slept through the entire windstorm last night like I did?
No.
I did.
I know, I was shocked waking up with all the branches that were down. So
Wow.
this was Oak Knoll this morning. This is our driving range. All of these posts were blown down in the wind.
Whoa,
Wow.
Yeah, it was a powerful one last night. And so just FYI, Oak Knoll is closed right now as they're working to lower the remaining posts that are now our safety hazard, and then they'll figure out next steps for getting the driving range back up and going.
Wow.
So that was just a fun tidbit, but what I do want to jump into is next week, we're going to tour the Ashland wastewater treatment plant, which is next to the Ashland Dog Park. Scott, my question for you, where would you like folks to park? Oh, you're on mute right now.
So see those 3 circles at the top? There is a parking area to the left of the one at the top. There's a few spaces there that people can park, you know, yeah, in that general area. And I'll let Chance and Ben know that that's where people will be parking. And then I would just meander up to where it says Ashland Wastewater Treatment, to that building right there.
Great, so parking right here, Scott, might be a few
Yeah.
places right here.
Yep.
Perfect. So we will get that tour next week. I will say it'll be a crowded tour. It might be slightly truncated because we'll actually be changing out membranes on that day. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, so there'll be a contractor on site. They are replacing one of our membrane treatment trains. So there'll be a lot of activity going on. But Ben will break away and walk everyone around the facility. You just might not be able to get into the membrane treatment room.
And Scott, will you tell me on this map where the membrane treatment room is?
It's to the south of where it says Ashland Wastewater Treatment. So, yep, that building is our membrane facility.
All right, cool. Well, y'all, we look forward to seeing you next week. Next week will be our last class. But as always, I am here and our department heads are here to answer questions outside of OLLI. All right, cool. Thank you, Scott, for your time today.
Thank
Thank you so much,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thanks, everybody.